Hello, can we talk today? I want to talk about DACA, the DACA bill, and the black underclass in America. Now, DACA is commonly referred to as being a deferred action for childhood arrivals. They're not talking about children in general. They're talking about immigrants coming to this country in general, and more specifically, they're talking about immigrant children coming in from Hispanic countries in the South. Today, let's talk about that because right now, the United States Congress and the Oval Office have spent years and years debating and arguing about DACA, what they're going to do about the DACA program. Now, the DACA program was designed to be what they call a dream, called the DREAM Act. And it was set up back in about 2012 by Obama. And what he was advocating was that we owed a responsibility under the so-called American dream to provide protection and security and opportunities for Hispanic children coming across the border. That's why at one point in our life, I guess in his lifetime of being in the office, he went down and tried to help about 110,000 Hispanic children that were lined up along the borders of Mexico. And he committed about $3.5 billion to provide them with security, clothing, food, housing, and bring them into the country. And now I think that number is up to something like about 850,000. And so the DREAM Act, called the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, is now up to about 850,000, and they trying to figure out how to protect them and give them greater opportunities as well as first-class citizenship in this country. And so today, what I'm going to talk about is how does that impact social economically on Black folk, and looking at it, it amazes me that after all these years of having enacted all kinds of immigration laws, that the one thing was always missing. That was a historical understanding of the negative impacts that immigrants have on Black folk in this country. Never has anyone ever brought that up. And immigration policy excluded Black folk intentionally to provide benefits to immigrants coming into this country from around the world. That's why back in 1790, the first immigration nationalization laws declared America to be a white nation, and all whites were invited, and any groups from around the world who could pass as sub-ethnics of the white society could come into America and get enrichments and benefits. They weren't coming here looking for freedom or religion, or coming here to just get along with Black folk. They came here to be enriched with a thing they call the American dream. And yet I've never heard about defining the American dream, but the American dream in the simplest term was simply inviting people to come to America and get free Indian land and free Black labor. That's the American dream. That's why the DACA Act that we're going to talk about today is called the DREAM Act, which means how do we provide all this security and interest and benefits for anybody coming to this country, and not including Black folk, because Black folk have a zero quota on them up until 1965, and they were excluded from anything that would be beneficial to immigrants coming to this country. And so I'm concerned about where is the Black leadership? Why is it that people are not talking about the negative impact of Black folk? See, Newton, way back in history, Newton came out with a principle of what he called the third motion of law and movement, where he said that for every action, there must be an equal and opposite reaction. Did you ever wonder why you could bring in all these millions and millions of immigrants into the country? Let's say after 1790, they brought in 20 million immigrants from around the world into the country immediately. And by the 1800s, from 1800s to early 1800s, they brought another 30 million. They were coming from Eastern Europe, Western Europe, Southern Europe, and Northern Europe. Then they began to come in from Asia and the Middle East. All these people came poured into the country, and they came in to supplant, depreciate, and subordinate, and use Black folk as a platform for enrichment into the country. That's a part of the American dream, is to come in and displace and get resources and access to resources and rights and privileges that are denied to Black folk. That is the American dream. That's a big part of what's called the DACA Act that's currently being debated in Congress. Now, guess what? Not one political party, neither the Republican Party or the Democratic Party, has pointed out that all these immigrants have historically had a negative impact on Black folk. You don't hear any of the Black overclass talking about the negative impacts that immigrants have on Black folk. And let me jump back 1 second, back to 1790, and show you what I mean by the negative impact. The whole purpose of slavery was to maldistribute almost 100% of all this nation's resources into the hands of immigrants coming into the country. And that's why when it started off, when they set up the DREAM Act in 1790, and it was going to be based basically initially around land ownership, and then black labor. Because you see, black labor brought 90% of the value to the land. So as soon as they set it up, the first thing that George Washington said was, "Give me land. I want 100,000 acres of free land." He got it. Then Thomas Jefferson said, "We're going to give him 100,000 acres of free land. I want 100,000 acres of free land." And then when Patrick Henry, that you read about in the history books about riding a horse and saying, "Give me liberty, give me death," he says, "Well, if you're going to give George Washington 100,000 acres of free land and Thomas Jefferson 100,000 acres of free land, I want 65,000 acres of free land." Now, the importance of that is that every immigrant then that followed those three historical founding fathers, they all were able to get free land coming to America as immigrants. As they poured in, they were immediately coming in this country and getting what they call land grants. They could pick up 650 acres of free land as soon as they touched the ground over here. Then for every slave they own, they can get another 150 acres of land. And through land grants, and also into what they call head rights acts in the United States. And the railroads were set up after that. They came in and started the railroads coming in from Europe, and they picked up 24 million acres of free land. The United States gave them 6 miles of free acreage on both sides of the railroad across America. And so what happens now is that all those immigrants came into America. They got basic land enrichments by owning the land and all the resources in the land. That means like mineral rights, so, and anything else, the timber on the land, the gold, chrome, silver, bauxite, copper, magnesium, and the oil, gas, anything that land was given, transferred over to immigrants coming to America. At the same time, they had a zero quota on black folk getting any land. Black folk talking about 40 acres and a mule, 40 acres of land and a mule and $100. They couldn't get 1 acre of free land. So intentionally, this nation, using its immigration policy, maldistributed almost 100% of everything of value into the hands of immigrants coming to America, and all that land and all the minerals and physical aspects of that land became embedded inside the immigrant class in America, and it has multiplied and tripled and doubled in value every 20 years. So that now, at this point in time, that the dominant white society owns and controls, through immigrant migration to this country, almost 99% of everything of value. And so when blacks came out of slavery, since they were denied access to anything because they were not immigrants, blacks are the non-immigrants in this country. So they didn't fall under the immigrant banner to get any resources, any rights, any privileges. They were denied all those things. Those things were set aside specifically and solely for immigrants. And so now immigrants control 99% of it, and their descendants have received it. It's passed on from one generation to the next. And black kids, in other words, they don't inherit anything because their parents and ancestors were not immigrants. And so today we're talking about the DACA and what the impact of DACA is, that was set up by Obama, the DREAM Act, to give them all, to protect them, to give them resources, to give them $3.5 billion, and to be able to provide them with housing, clothes, foods, income. And those individuals, since Obama was in office, they've grown up now. Now they're teenagers into their 20s. But they're still getting benefits. They're getting free college education. But yet nobody's concerned about black kids across this country. Nobody's rushing out to give any benefits equal to the immigrants into these black kids in Chicago, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Atlanta, Georgia, Detroit, Michigan. They get nothing. And so the immigrants have always had a negative impact on black folk, but neither the Congress, nor the White House, nor any of the political parties, or the black overclass will make an issue out of the fact that black folk are the only group that's negatively impacted, and nobody wants to make an issue out of it. And so if this new bill that's being presently considered right now today in the White House, in the Congress, about giving more benefits and giving citizenship, first-class citizenship, to these immigrants that came in under the Obama administration, that over the 800,000 of them that's out there, and giving them first-class benefits. If that occurs, black folk are going to get buried alive, because based on the 1965 immigration law, once you give them benefits and rights and privileges and resources and entitlements, they got a right under what's called the family system or the chain system to bring in their uncles, their mama, their father, and other members of their family. And it's projected that what will follow those DACA immigrants will be somewhere around 20 more million immigrants coming into this country. Now, the Hispanic immigrants already outnumber black folk, and they passed black folk back in 2000 and rendered black folks voting null and void. Those immigrants have displaced blacks economically, politically, socially, in jobs, employment, political circumstances, and their voting. Black folk are null and void. Black folk now outnumbered 9-1 by the Asian immigrants, the European immigrants, and the Hispanic immigrants. Black folk voting is immaterial. It's like throwing a hungry bulldog fence and throwing 109 hungry bulldogs into that fence and putting one rabbit in there. They're going to vote on what they have for lunch. That means that the rabbit's vote is totally immaterial. That's what happened to blacks now. Blacks are outnumbered 9-1 because of immigration policy in this country. So if black people have a halfway decent chance of being able to survive and compete in this country, I'm going to recommend a number of things that blacks must immediately do. They're planning on being a competitive group in America. Let me give you some things that they must immediately do, and that before this DACA bill is passed and voted on by the Congress and the President of the United States approves it, and black folk who are standing dead silence, and the black overclass who are totally indifferent to what happened to black folk, sit there and watch it go down as a spectator. Here are the things I'm going to recommend, and most of the things I'm going to recommend are included in the last Powernomics book called The Black History Reader, 101 questions that black folks should have asked but never asked about how they're going to survive and compete in society. That book is currently available on the Powernomics website for $99. You can get it and read it, and it comes in a power pack of 5 other books. The Black History Reader comes in with the Powernomics book, with the Black Labor, White Wealth, and 2 Dirty Little Secrets books, and 1 DVD on how you should educate black children. And that's called a library pack. That would be available for $99. Or you can order the Black Label book singly for something like about $29. But that book would cover all the issues I'm going to be explaining to you right now. So listen very carefully, but you must do something immediately. The first thing I would ask black folk to do is to use all necessary means that they can imagine to get out and publicize and put pressure and demand with the Congress and the President. First thing, demand that this nation close the immigration doors until they've done a quantifiable and qualifiable study, analysis of the negative impact that immigrants have historically placed on black folk and they're currently placed on black folk, and what the DACA bill would do to black folk. There will be a negative impact. For every action, as I said a few minutes ago, there's an equal and opposite reaction. That's the first thing. What would be the negative social economic impact on black folk? Close those doors before you take a vote. That's number one. Number two, I want this nation to be able to close its immigration doors and change its public policy and how they treat Haitians in this country. They're talking about now a Trump administration about sending back 75,000 black Haitians back to Haiti. Now that they're doing that for a very specific reason. They said because they don't want any blacks coming in the country, but they don't mind all these millions of other Asians, Arabs, Hispanics coming into the country. They're trying to punish Haiti. Why are they trying to punish Haiti? Because when the immigration laws went into effect in 1790, and 1 year later, in 1791, Haitians broke free. The Toussaint Overture beat the devil out of the French and ran them out of Haiti. France did not like that. And the world got scared and fearful that revolt by Toussaint Overture and the blacks in Haiti was spread around the world. Being they were spread to come into the United States. They were just about 200 or 300 miles from Haiti. Because Haitians are the only group of people, black people on earth, that have ever escaped colonization and on this earth. Anytime, anywhere where whites have conquered and taken over land and conquered black people and enslaved or colonized them, the only group that's ever broken free was Haiti. And when Haiti broke free and beat the French, that scared the devil out of the United States. And that's why they came up with this whole concept of the Second Amendment and the Constitution, which means we immediately passed the laws demanding that militias be set up in all the states and that all white males between 18 and 45 must bear arms and function as either plantation police or paddy rollers to check any blacks that are running free. But in addition to Haitians beating them, the same thing, Haitians also beat Spain and they also beat England. They beat 3 nations. and then as a result of that, nobody was felt comfortable with Haitians running free any place on the earth. And so they threw up what's called the Monroe Doctrine, which says now any islands that are close to the United States, especially Haiti's, that you can't come in and get involved in any issue pertaining to them. They've intentionally kept Haiti poor, penniless, and impoverished and backwards because they are fearful that Haitians will break free again. And that's why no country would come into Haiti and try to help Haiti and help those Haitians. And when Haitians come to America, they would turn their boats around and send them back to Haiti. That's why right now in the White House, the administration under President Trump is trying to send 75,000 Haitians back to Haiti. And so again, that's an anti-immigration aspect of the laws for black folk. And in addition to that, even the immigration quota in general keeps black folk coming to America in at least 0.5% of all the immigrants coming to America. Less than 0.5% are from black countries. We got a few blacks that drift in from Africa, and they're accepted in the United States. And what they do there, but it's very difficult to find out how many is coming in here for the simple reason that they classify anybody from coming in from Africa as being an African American. Even though you got Berbers, you got Palestinians, you got Arabs, you got Asians, anybody coming from Africa qualifies as an African American. You can't find out, it's very difficult to find out, break down and de-aggregate the numbers of immigrants coming in here from Africa because they use that very broad, ambiguous term called African American. They can't tell how many are not really African American or blacks. They're just anybody coming from Africa to America is an African American. So immigration policy must be changed and expanded so that more than 1% of blacks coming in as immigrants, they come in this country. And it should be equated to the same number coming in from these Latin American countries. The black folk must demand that they have the same number of blacks coming in from anywhere in the world coming into this country as immigrants, just like you have for Hispanics coming to the country. The second thing you must do is to try to change this country's policies that were set up in the 1965 immigration law, which says that instead of educating black folk in this country, because they after 500 years or 460 years of suffering a denial of education because slaves could not be educated, and under Jim Crow segregation, they were only subjected to minimum kind of education. So therefore, when in 1965, rather than devoting a lot of time and energy to try to qualify blacks to be competent with any group coming to America, what they did instead was to create special programs like the H-1B program, which says let's go around the world and find people that are already educated and bring them into the United States. That way we don't have to waste any money on trying to educate and train those individuals who are the descendants of slaves and make them competitive with the white immigrants and the white ethnic groups coming to this country so they can compete. So what they're doing now in the immigration policy is going around the country and bringing in people from any country, India, China, any place on earth that's already got an education. That way they don't have to hire black folk and say, we won't hire y'all because y'all are not qualified. They've done nothing to bring the education level of black folk up since the 1965. They use that H-1B program and similar programs to bring in immigrants instead of educating black folk. And black folk, therefore, are kept at 1% immigrants coming to this country. Now, the importance of that is that you kept the black folk been made a minority. They're the only planned systematic minority in the country. That's in a society in which the majority wins and the minority loses, and the wealth and power follows the majorities. Black folk now are a planned minority, which means they never win as long as you continue to bring in immigrants from around the world over them, educate them, give them entitlements, rights, privileges, and enrichments over black folk. You must change that. You must start demanding that before allowing them to go and create a new DACA bill and bring in another 850 immediately to this country, and then giving an opportunity for another 20 million to follow them into the country. The next thing is that black folk must place a great deal of importance, saying that you're not going to open the doors up for blacks across this country so they can be a competitive group educationally, politically, economically, and in voting strength, then you need to put blacks into a protected class and recognize that black people have not been treated like any other people in this nation. They're entitled to be recognized, appreciated for how they've been treated historically, and recognized as exceptional people. They must be put into a category called exceptionality, which means nobody should be allowed to compete with them. If necessary, go back to the old Freedmen Bureau that was set up in 1865 to put black people into a freedman class. And now blacks need to demand that they be put into a protected class, just like this country has historically put women, especially white women, into a protected class. They put American Indians into a protected class. They put immigrants into a protected class. And now with the Obama administration, they were trying to protect gays and transsexuals into a protected class. Blacks must demand that they be put into a protected class to be able to compete and defend themselves and be secure in their lifestyle, away from all these competitive groups that are coming into the country that are getting benefits that have been denied black folk historically. And lastly, and most importantly, is that black folk need to demand that they not be put in these very broad, ambiguous classes called minorities, poor folk, and people of color. That they be put into a special class based on their exceptionality and call blacks exceptional people, because they are the engines that drove the economic development of this nation. They are the ones that picked the cotton, built the business, built the roads, built the canals. And nobody on this earth could be compared in America, any place else, with black folk. Black folk are exceptional people. And one day, look at my Harvest Institute line, and I'll give you about 20 things that make black folk different from any other groups in terms of what they created, what they produced, and what their achievements in this nation and on the earth. They are special people that should not be equated to anybody else. The most disadvantaged thing that this society continue to do, even in this DACA bill or anything dealing with immigrants, is to keep pretending that somehow that unequals is equal. Black folk, nobody is equal to blacks in this country, and nobody has contributed equally as black folk have in the development and building of this nation. And to that degree, go out now and demand that the doors be closed on any kind of more immigration laws, so those 4 or 5 things I just mentioned are brought into effect to be able to protect and give black folk a secured, respected opportunity in this nation that they helped build. Thank you.